All right, honey, be honest. How, a scale of 1 to 5, or maybe a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at managing, controlling your time?
Oh, a 10, honey.
No, really, seriously.
Oh my gosh. Is this a trick question?
No, it's not a trick question.
I'd say 6.
6? Okay, that's pretty good. So we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, I guess you can call it time management. It's really about how we view time. Is it a friend or an enemy? Right? Because depending on how effective you feel you are during the day or how productive you feel you are today, you can view it as a friend or enemy. Right? Like if we don't have enough time, we don't get to some of the important things in our business and our personal life, we kind of view it more as an enemy. It's like, oh, we don't have enough time, and time's almost like a 4-letter word, which it is. Mm-hmm. Technically it is, but you know what I mean. We kind of treat time sometimes as a 4-letter word because we don't have enough time for it. We're not as productive. Where's the time go? Right? There's all those phrases that kind of alludes to that. So
well, and it might have to do with how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
How productive am I at this moment or this day or this time?
Yeah. So we really want to tackle this thing about time and kind of show you that, you know what? And we're just as guilty as anybody else about not being as productive in periods of time. But I think we've trying to do better because we are mindful of it. And number one, it's one of those things we realized for ourselves early on in our business, but also we've been helping our clients with that issue, mm-hmm. right? Because we want them to be more productive. The more productive they are in the business, the more free time they have to spend with each other, and the more profitable they are in the business. And so because of that, we are more mindful about how we use our time because we're kind of preaching it. So we want to make sure we practice what we preach, right?
Exactly.
At the same time, we're not perfect. And so doing an episode like this helps remind us, okay, how are we doing with time? Because time is not a commodity, it's a precious asset that you need to protect because you don't have an unlimited supply of it.
But the good thing is we all have the same amount, regardless of who you are.
Mm-hmm. And depending on how you use your time, it can be either productive or it can just be filled up with busy work that just gets you tired but gets you nowhere.
Yeah, because have you ever seen like the people that are like really super productive? They're busy. I don't know how they get all the stuff done that they do, but they just seem to have some system that works.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like they say, oh, if someone's got a lot on their plate, they're the one to go ask when you need help because they're good with time management. Mm-hmm. They can help you.
So, ready for this episode, honey?
I'm ready, honey.
All right. So let's talk about how we can make your time your friend, not your enemy. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. So, okay, honey, let's talk about time.
Oh, that's a big hot button.
So, what would you consider? Would time your enemy or your friend?
Guess it depends how you look at it.
Yeah. So, why? What would be the circumstance, I guess, when you would consider time your enemy?
When I get distracted so easily and I'm not like productive and I'm not organized, I'm kind of just all over the place.
Okay. And then when would you consider time your friend?
Oh, going on a vacation.
Oh, okay.
It'd be my friend when I'm productive and I feel like I've gotten things done. I'm organized and things just seem to be rolling along.
And so how can you make time more of your friend more of the time?
I need to be more consistent. I try and put everything down on my calendar that I need to do, and it works really well for me. But for some reason, just because it works well doesn't mean I do it all the time. I get out of the habit every once in a while, and then I find myself not getting as much done as I would have liked to have. And I think that's the reason, one of the many reasons.
Okay. So how can we be more consistent with that?
Putting things down on the calendar all the time and just not thinking, oh, sometimes I get tired of getting into a routine or it's boring, so I want to do something different. So I don't put it down on my calendar, all the stuff I need to do and time block. And
because you don't like routines. So,
some things I don't like routines for, yes.
So you always want to do something different.
Yeah, I like to switch it up, try something new.
Yeah, hence.
You're laughing at me, honey.
No, I mean,
yes, you are.
I can suffer from that too. But in this world of business, it seems like time is our enemy more than our friend sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. But whose fault is that really? So that's why I was asking you these questions. Right?
Yeah, putting me on the spot.
Yeah, because we have not rehearsed this, and so, but right, as I talk to you, as you ask questions, you can pinpoint the reasons of why we're not as productive or when we look at time as our enemy. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to us, us as the choices that we make or don't make. And so there's so many things coming at us in our business and our personal lives that some of the more important aspects of our lives are being neglected because, well, we're just not being intentional about it. And we're just letting things happen. Like you said, when you get out of your routine or you're putting things on the calendar, then you just start reacting to life and you start to lose control and it becomes your enemy.
Yeah, and it happens pretty easily just because you get into a routine. I don't know why it seems so easy to get into the routine and it's challenging to stay in it. Because once you don't do it, then it's like, oh my gosh, I got to get back into it again. And it takes more time. Mm-hmm.
And so regardless if it's, the busyness of business or work or some of the other stuff, what happens is, spouses were going to feel ignored, kids feel neglected. And in business, many of the high-level projects that would grow and be really productive for our business are being put off time and again. Right?
Yeah, because it seems like it's easier, simpler just to do the small little put out the fire things than it is the big, huge things that are going to move your company forward or provide a lot of growth for you.
Well, a lot of it is you're just responding to the need right in front of you. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not, I don't know if it's easy per se, but I think you're just responding. So the moment you get a text.
Well, you're reacting to it, is what you're saying. So
yeah, responding, reacting, yeah. But yeah, you get a text and you feel inclined to respond. Right. So that just takes you off your game of whatever you're working on. And then, of course, an email pops in, you get a notification, and you just start responding.
You just keep getting sidetracked, and then you never get to the big thing.
Yeah, and people make a request, and so you do some little research and find out the information they need, and you send it to them.
And then I want a snack.
Yeah, and so and for some reason, those things seem more important than the big stuff, the more productive work. The more productive work, like just say, just developing content or writing an e-blast or something like that. Writing some new copy for a web page or something like that, where it's important to do, but it also takes some very focused attention, and it just feels a little bit more overwhelming sometimes, and so it's easier just to respond to the immediate need, the text, right? The text is easy to respond to, but you keep doing those things over and over again. Next thing you know, you don't have time to do the big things.
Well, yeah, because I agree with you, because it's going to take a chunk of time to do the big things and more brain power, so you're going to have to sit down and be intentional about it. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to do it when you keep getting sidetracked.
Yeah. So time really is our enemy because we don't control what we do and when we do it. It seems like we have no choice, right? Because when when I talk to you or we talk to clients or other friends, talk about how busy there was, how busy, and you might ask them, oh, how come you don't do, how come you haven't say written a book? You've been talking about writing a book. How come you haven't written a book yet, or started on it? Oh, I don't have time. I'm doing this or doing that, or whether it's a business related issue. They've been talking about launching a new product or launching a new service. When are you going to get that done? Oh, I just haven't had time, right? And then we blame the lack of being productive because we don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we need to dig deeper is why do we not have the time to do the things that are more important?
Why we're not being intentional about doing it.
Yeah. So it's almost like time or lack of time is a scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why don't we get this done? I didn't have time. So it's like you point the finger at time. We don't have enough time. And so I think we need to be a little bit more honest with ourselves, myself included, and say, why don't we have time? And what do we need to do to change it?
Well, and be willing to face it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I waste so much time. I hate to say it, it's embarrassing, but I waste so much time just doing nothing.
Yep. You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks.
So, I'm sure. Am I the only one, you guys?
And so, so because of that, right, we make a lot of excuses. So we talked about the business stuff that gets put on the back burner, but then so do like date nights, making kids soccer games, being with friends.
Mm-hmm.
I know just, recently got invited by my high school buddies to participate in the fantasy football league. And, the first thing I'm thinking of, well, I don't have time. But also, and then there's also $100 buy-in. And I'm thinking, this will be a waste of money because I haven't been really following football that closely. Because I know some of these guys, they're like passionate and they are following it. If they're not watching the game, they're following the stats. And besides my Dallas Cowboys, I don't really follow all the other teams and all the other players, which obviously you need to know to develop your fantasy football team. And I'm thinking, I haven't been keeping up with this. So that'd be just a waste of time. I'd be losing my money. I even text them, let me just give you $100 because I'm going to lose it anyway. And what's the point? And then I have to catch myself and think, okay, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it to win. I'm actually doing this to stay connected with my friends that we don't get to stay connected with a lot, right? And so here's something that for the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to stay connected. And besides that, we don't. Like maybe once a year when we're up in San Jose that we get to see him for one night. But throughout the year, it's a little sporadic, just little messages here and there. But, here's a time that we get to spend with them. And also, as the texts are going back and forth.
I think you guys, I'm going to have to silence these texts. They're crazy. I mean, they'll have like 100. It's like bing, 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 bing.
So we're on this group text. Everybody's like, Jimmy, who's like the catalyst of this whole thing, he has all these people that he wants to get on the league, and we're going back and forth, and then they're like, Jeff, are you in? Joe, are you in? Robert, are you in? And like when people are saying, one time they're committing, and then, Robert, are you in? I haven't heard anything from you. And then the banter's going back and forth.
All the high school, grade school banter.
All the banter's going back and forth. And I'm just reading this, right? I haven't really responded. And, finally I'm like, all right, I got to do this. I mean, it's just the fun of reading and participating in the banter back and forth was worth $100.
Well, hopefully you're not doing all that while you're working because you'll never get anything done.
No, and actually, because everybody else has a job or business too. So actually, the pinging back and forth is mainly off hours, as you notice. But even I wasn't the only one that said that. I remember Chemo said the same thing. It's like, this banter is worth $100.
But I have to say, the good thing is you have the phone in the other room. I can hear it pinging, but you're not looking at it every time it pings.
No. So, So anyways, why did I go in that story? Well, because we make all these excuses of, we don't have time
for relationships.
For relationships. And, I think you and I do a good job with each other, but then all those external relationships have also suffered, that I realized this year. And so I try to be more intentional this year about that. And so, this fantasy football thing is one of those ways to just really stay connected. And it's been fun. The first weekend has been pretty hilarious. So, and it feeds my soul. And, again, I don't get to stay connected with them that often. So this has been a lot of fun. So, instead of making excuses, like I was already running through all the excuses in my mind, like, this next few months are going to be busy. We're doing more traveling, and then staying up, keeping up to speed with our business and all that kind of stuff, doing this podcast. And, you're thinking about all the things you need to do, and maybe some of the amount of time you're not going to have as we're traveling. And, putting this on my plate, fantasy football, that's another thing I don't really need to do. But again, it's all about relationships. It's not about the winning or the $100, although I do want to win, honey.
Of course you do, honey.
Let's make that clear.
You're taking me out.
And so good news is, first week in fantasy football, I'm 1-0.
Yay, we're winning money.
I won the first game. We haven't won anything yet, honey. You got to wait till the end of the season.
Oh.
and so here we are. I'm already, it's already poo-pooing this whole thing, and here I won the first game, and at least we're off to a good start.
Well, and two, you don't have to be reading every text that comes by. If you're busy, you can just
yeah, those things are saved, so you just go back and just read through the whole stream.
Or you just get the latest one and you don't read all the other ones.
No, you got to read the whole thing, because they'll build on each other. So you can't read part of the banter. You got to read the whole thing to really.
Or you can just read it when you have more time.
That's what I do. I wait till whatever, the morning or whatever, and then I'll just read through the whole thing. It doesn't take that long.
You're not looking at it every time it pings.
They're just little tweets, basically. But anyways, getting back to the podcast,
I know,
honey.
We get sidetracked.
So we got to stop making an excuse of being busy and really getting to the issue of why and what can we do to change this. Because otherwise, as we said before, busy's become like that badge of honor. We said, we're just busy. And we think that if we say to other people and other friends, other colleagues that we're busy, we're going to look important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to look like we've accomplished a lot, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know sometimes, too, we have date night on the calendar, and you're like, honey, we got date night tonight. I'm like, it's like Friday night. I'm like, I really don't feel like going. You're like, what? We got to go. It's on the calendar. And then once we go, I have a great time. Yeah. It's just sometimes I'm not feeling it at that moment. But then once I get all dressed and ready to go, then...
Yeah, for the woman, that's all about fun. I kind of drag her out to go have fun.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and go kicking and screaming, and then finally when she's there, we're at the event or whatever, we have a great time.
Yes, we always do.
Yeah, so let's transition. Let's stop making time our enemy. And it's kind of interesting, though. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. Mm-hmm. Because, you kind of consider time our enemy because we don't have enough of, but yet we want more of it, right? So it's really a friend, or it's a friend we want, but we just don't have enough of it. So maybe...
Because I don't think we manage it well.
Yeah. Yeah, so how can we make time more of our friend more often? So first, as we set this up, is we got to stop being so reactive and being more proactive. Mm-hmm. And instead of feeling out of control, take control. Because time is something that we have full control over, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, how we use it is really up to us, regardless of how there's things that are put more pressure on you, meeting a deadline, meeting a customer issue, and those kind of things. Those are things, yes, we need to take care of, but at the same time, there's some of those things we don't necessarily have to take care of in the moment, that we can still control how we respond and when we respond for the most part.
Well, and I think we don't have to get stuck in it. Like, we have a piece of real estate we're trying to sell, and we've had some challenges with it. Things have kind of gone back and forth, and it would have been easy for me to just stay stuck in that frustrating spot and not want to move forward, and then it affects how I'm thinking emotionally and me being productive with other things, because I'm still just thinking about the challenges that we're having.
Mm-hmm. So you could be wasting time just thinking about it.
Right. And then it's holding me back from doing all the other things I need to do because I'm mulling it over.
Yeah, because we talked about that in one of the other issues that we're having with plumbing in our condo, and you're running through all these scenarios, and told you, honey, there's nothing to decide right now because we don't have all the information. So you're going through all the scenarios in your head, even when you're not talking about it, you're thinking about it. And I said, there's really nothing to think about right now until we get all the information.
And then it wears you down and you're tired, and then it's harder to get things done.
Yeah, so let's wait for all the information to come out, and then we'll sit down and talk about it and make a decision, right?
Yeah, that works out good for me.
So that's a good example of, even though there's nothing to necessarily respond to at the moment, yet you're filling up your time, your headspace, with just thinking about it. Thinking about something that doesn't need a decision at the moment.
Yeah, trying to come up with strategies for something that doesn't need a strategy at the moment.
Yeah, so there's one thing about responding to a text or email or something physical that's happening that is requesting some feedback or response. There's a whole other thing where it's more of a mental issue. The mental space that's been taken up, which is also taking up time. It's not just taking up mental space, but it's taking up time because you're thinking about it and processing it when you don't need to.
Or if you're frustrated or angry about it too, it's just that's where your mind is.
Yeah, so let's be more mindful about taking more control over our time. So even with let's raise a customer issue of, customer has an issue, they want a response, we want to respond right away. We don't necessarily need to, right? Most of the time, majority of the time, it can wait. The key is just good communication with your customer. Say, thank you, I see it, we're gonna let's look into it, and I'll get back to you in fill in the blank.
Yeah, Sheila was talking about this on one of our previous podcasts.
And I mean, it could be 2 days. I mean, it depends on the extent of the problem, right? And how much research it takes or whatever, or what you need to do to resolve the issue. But give yourself that time to not be pressed on the issue so that you can still take care of other things in your business, but also acknowledge the customer that I hear you, it's important, and I will take care of it. Give me till, let's just say, 2 days. And, because I think we feel that we need to respond right away because the customer expects it right away. And a lot of us pride ourselves on customer service, so we want to take care of everything, right at the moment. Right? Which means now we're taking care of all kinds of stuff right at the moment. And it's filling up our time, and it prevents us from doing some of the other things in our business. But you'll be surprised that the majority of the time when you set the expectation up with your customer, that they're fine majority of the time. Right? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever's reasonable. Right? You don't want to, drag this thing out anyway. So whatever's reasonable enough to give you the proper amount of time to take care, do the due diligence and take care of the issue while still allowing you to do other things in the business. And it also puts the customer at ease that you've heard, you've responded, and I can expect a response in 2 days.
Well, and I think it lets things shake out too when you give it like a couple days, because you're not running on impulse and adrenaline, and you're able to get all the facts, you're able to get a good night's sleep, think about it, mull it over, and I think we make better decisions.
Yeah, and sometimes the customer, with that time, because sometimes maybe they're upset, and with time they will cool off, and a lot of times they even lower their expectations or desires of what they want, how they want things resolved, right? So with time, everybody kind of cools off, and yeah, you tend to be able to come up with a better solution with a little bit of time. So yeah, give yourself time, and just as long as you just communicate that with your customers, since we're talking about customer, that's one thing. And what's another issue that, like especially like in business, that we just feel we just gotta respond to at the moment? I know for me, one of them is, and I've talked about this before, but it's emails. As I basically don't respond right away. Well, it depends. Like, I don't read emails all the time throughout the day. Right, I just do it in the morning, lunchtime, and right before the close of the day. And then that way I'm not constantly checking emails and constantly responding, because usually when you read an email, you're tempted to respond, right? And so that's just going to eat up your day if you keep doing that throughout the day, as opposed to kind of batching it, putting boundaries around email responses or email reading, so it's self-contained in blocks. That way you have, most big blocks of time that you're not checking and responding to emails.
Yeah, you're good about this. You'll do like blocks. So you'll put a block of time for like content. And so you'll just sit down, I don't know, a couple hours and write the content. You're not going back and forth between texting and emails and 100 other things. You can just sit down and get it done a lot quicker without the interruptions.
Yeah, and that way you actually increase the amount of time that you have to work on the business, because when you kind of time block those, like the emails in specific time blocks, you stay engaged just with that. And then when you're just checking emails throughout the day, you actually waste more time, because going from one task to then reading emails and then back to task in hand, you waste time in that transition, right? There's a lot of research around this, is when you're multitasking, going back and forth between tasks, every time you're transitioning from one task to another, you lose time, because you have to it takes time to disengage from one task and then re-engage to another task, and then do the opposite when you go back to the next thing, as opposed to just working sequentially, start and finish one thing at a time. You'll be able to get through that task in a quicker amount of time. Does that make sense?
Well, and it's probably a lot more accurate too than keeping getting distracted, and then you're like, where was I? And then you're like, you forget. And
yeah, and because of that, you have to kind of just say you're doing emails or whatever. So just say I was writing an e-blast for the week. If I'm going back and forth checking emails and then writing the e-blast or whatever, then every time I come back to the e-blast, I have to reread some of the last paragraph or so, to kind of make sure I'm on the same page as when I left off.
Well, I know myself, sometimes I'm not as accurate because my mind's on different things and it's switching back and forth. And I'm like, oh boy, when I sent out that text, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of something else.
Yeah, so that's another example of taking control of your time. Just being more proactive about what you do and when you do it. Base is what it is.
Well, and you tell me too, honey, you just need to slow down and be more intentional about what you are doing. Just think about that one thing. Because I can get thinking about 10 things, and then I'm like, what was I doing? You know what I mean?
And then I know part of how I control time with meetings is I only tend to take meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are my meeting days. And the only time I'm seeing people on those other days are if it's a client, or it's just, one-off where it just won't work on the other days. I mean, but it's rare. But for the most part, I want to keep my Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for those on the business tasks. The stuff where I can just concentrate on the business at hand, like relationships, staying connected with friends and family, as well as clients and past clients. And then there's, finances, making sure I review our finances, keep the books up to date, and then just review our P&L, just like I just did this morning, because today's Friday. So Friday's my finance day, Finance Friday. and so because those are two things, for example, that would go by the wayside, right, if I didn't block out the time to do it.
And those are really important ones, the finances. You got to know where we're at, right?
Yeah. And so, because, we've gone through a couple of years where it wasn't on a regular schedule to do that. And so, end of the year, you got to catch up on all the bookkeeping.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy, you guys. Oh.
And so not only
Don't do that. Take it from us.
So it's not good practice just to do that in general, because, one, not just that workload at the end, but staying up to date real time with your finances allows you to catch certain things before it's too late.
Right.
Right?
You know where you're at. You don't want to wait 2 years later to find out, oh my gosh, that pricing wasn't right, or there was a mistake made.
Or you're just spending money on some subscription that you're not even using.
Yeah, because you found out you were subscribed to all these subscriptions.
5 things that I wasn't really using, or using it very much, and so you make the decision, do I really need this? And just cut it. So yeah, you go a whole year without really checking on those things, and you could be spending more money than you really need to.
Well, that's what they want you to do. They do the subscription, and then they just automatically put it on your credit card, so you don't even think about it. At the end of the year or the month,
Yep.
and so that's how they keep you going.
Yep, pretty much. so, and they're not much, right? They're like sometimes $5 or $10 or maybe $20. Some of these subscriptions aren't a lot, but then you add them up, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's a pretty good chunk of change when you.
Well,
add them
it's
up.
expensive if you're not using it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're not getting
$5
a return on your
adds
money.
up.
Yeah, you're not getting a return on your money. You're not using it for its intent, which means really your business is not taking advantage of the fee, the subscription you're using.
And then if you got 5, 10, 20 subscriptions, that really adds up that you're not using.
Yep, exactly. So, calendaring, what's important? That's one way to control your time, is to put the things that are most important in your calendar and just block it out.
Don't think I'm just going to keep it in my mind, put it on the calendar, because otherwise it just doesn't happen.
Yep, our weekly meetings are on the calendar, and then so we calendar the things, the most important stuff first, the things you want to do, the things that are high priority items, and then creating boundaries around some of the other activities that you're willing to do. So anyways, yeah, it's all about being intentional. It's all about taking control of your time and setting boundaries.
Well, I say keeping track of your time. Do you sit down and it's an interesting little assignment is write down all the different things you do during the day and keeping track, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much time I spent on this, because it adds up. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but you'll really open your eyes to it. I know you've been keeping track of how much you've been on social media on your phone.
Well, the phone, the phone, I think every phone does these days, where you can have a tracker of how much you're using your phone on what types of apps, right? And so I've used that to my advantage to say, okay, how can I cut it down, the usage down every week?
So is that working?
Yeah.
How much do you think you've cut it down?
I don't know total. I haven't tracked total, but every week it's gone down. There's a couple weeks where it went up, and then now the last couple weeks it's gone back down. So what it does is it just keeps it more forefront in the front of my mind that I'm on my phone a lot, and so I'm trying to minimize that. And so I know that I want to minimize the phone use. Every time I pick up the phone, I'm thinking about what it's going to look like at the end of the week.
Yeah,
is it going to go up? Is usage going to go up or down? And so
being competitive with yourself.
Just try to be very mindful about that. So it makes me second guess whether or not I need to open up the phone, because 99% of the time I don't need to. The times I check the phone that are good is when I'm double checking my calendar. Or making a phone call or receiving a phone call. And those are the basic, essential, relatively important things. But social media is not important unless I do post stuff for business. But even that can be batched, because even if you don't have something like HubSpot or not SurveyMonkey, but some of those social media management tools that I got rid of because I didn't really need it, because now on both Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, you can schedule when to post something. So I can do that ahead of time. That way I don't have to be checking the phone all the time, or I don't have to be on the phone, all the time to post stuff. I can just pre-plan all that stuff.
Oh, that's great, because I tell myself, and this never happens, but I'm like, oh, I'll just be on for 5 minutes. I'm not on for 5 minutes. It's like I wish I could be on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I know what really helped me, and I've only done it once or twice, is I put my phone in the other room. And so then I can't be, because how much time do we waste just checking to see if you have a text?
Yeah, even when you haven't heard a notification, you just want to check. Maybe you missed something.
Something's going on I don't know about.
We got the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out on text. And so,
because I put it in the room, and then at the end of the day, after I finished working, I went in there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't have any text, or I just had one or two, you know what I mean? So it didn't make sense for me to be checking it all day.
Yep. So at the end, honey, how do we make time more of our friend than enemy? Well, take control. We have choices of how we use our time. And for the most part, we do have control over that. We have the choice to make. We aren't necessarily, very few things are a true emergency that you need to respond at the moment, that even for things you need to respond to, you can kind of batch it to kind of make it at a time that's a little bit less interruptive of your day of being productive, right? And that's not just for your business, but it's even at home. Right? Making sure you can spend time with each other and your family.
And just remember, if you're saying yes to something, that means you're saying no to something else.
Yep. By default, you're saying no to something else. And you definitely don't want that to be your family, because then they look at you and they say, oh, we're not that important, right?
Well, and sometimes you notice like the things you really want to do, you love, you do the least amount of. But we're doing all this other stuff that really doesn't matter to us because we don't want to say no or hurt someone's feelings or whatever reason it might be. We're doing all this stuff we don't really want to do and not that much stuff we really love to do.
Yeah. So hopefully this helps. That will help you turn time into your friend, not your enemy. And I know it's going to be rough because there's so many justifications, rationalizations of why you have to respond to this thing or that thing, right? So it's going to be a challenge, but we encourage. That's why we encourage you to have an accountability, an encouraging partner, like your spouse, right? Because we all want the best for each other. We want to have a fulfilled life. We want to be able to spend time with each other, not be bogged down just with work. So you can hold each other accountable in a fun way, right? How can we do that in a fun way?
And I also say find the people that are really productive and get their secrets from them.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised what you can learn. Sometimes there's small little hacks you can do to make a big difference.
Yeah. So if this episode was helpful, please share this with another married entrepreneur near you that could use this. And also feel free to leave a 5-star review for us on Apple Podcasts.
Because we appreciate you guys so much. You mean a lot to us. And we're having fun spending time with you guys.
Yeah. So until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.